Well, a very good morning to you. It is the dawn of a very different day for people in England, with a significant easing of lockdown restrictions. Midnight drinkers took full advantage of their first pint outside a pub in more than 3 months, as some businesses got the green light to reopen, but a warning from the Prime Minister for people to behave responsibly. So let's take a look at what rules change from today. And pubs, restaurants, hospitality venues will be able to reopen for outdoor service with no curfew and no requirement for a substantial meal. That's if you want to drink alcohol, of course. Now, holidays and overnight stays in England will be allowed with the same household, but the government has told people to minimise domestic travel where they can. Self-contained holiday accommodation, like campsites, will be able to welcome guests back. Non-essential retail, hairdressers and nail salons can open their doors as well from today. And indoor leisure facilities like gyms and spas will be allowed to reopen, but not saunas or steam rooms. Sadia Chowdhury reports.
The first pint back. And the countdown has been a long time coming.
4, 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, take your seats. Have your first drinks. Please come down.
They've been waiting for this since before Christmas.
Cheers.
This bar in Bexley Heath wasted no time opening its doors. But people can't go inside.
Just 18 people here tonight, and they all have to sit outdoors, and it's safe to say that most people are used to the social distancing. But today comes with a fresh plea from the Prime Minister for people to behave responsibly.
Some people will, some people won't. Good, bad. You know, some people are going to flout, aren't they? But we're all going to behave ourselves. I'm not having any more.
Sociable again, isn't it? That's the thing, because we've all missed it, but I know we've had to, and we're still going to be sensible, we hope, because we don't want another lockdown.
As long as people don't have too much, I think everyone's just looking forward to getting back to normal again.
Today's reopenings include gyms and swimming pools, non-essential retail and hair salons. Roller coasters are back too. Hands, face, space is still the key message, with the new addition of fresh air. Jake Greaves' pub garden in Bromley is stunning, but it's the inside he misses.
For us to feel like things are truly back to normal is for people to be back at the bar again and ordering drinks. To be honest, I mean, we're a pub at the end of the day, and table service, it's nice from a customer point of view, but for operating as a pub, it's very difficult. It's not what we're used to at all, really.
Boris Johnson has called this a major step forward in our roadmap to freedom. But there's still some distance to go. Sadia Chowdhury, Sky News.
Well, Fraser Maud is in a gym in Birmingham for us this morning. But first, let's go to Becky Cottrell, who's in a Hairdressers in West London. I know, Becky, the Prime Minister is getting his hair cut, about now. I can imagine all hairdressers are going to be pretty busy this week.
Yeah, I'm at Harry's in Chelsea in London. Lots of eager people coming in to get their hair cut. They've been open since 6 a.m. this morning trying to fit customers in. They've got a waiting list of 3,000 people, so they're opening for longer hours during the day and going 7 days a week to get them all in. I spoke to one customer today who said that this really meant a lot to her because she's had to wear her hair in a ponytail for the past few months, so finally gets to have a haircut. It's a big day. And I'm joined by Tony Hendry, who is the salon manager and senior stylist here. Tony, tell me about demand. How many people are trying to get their hair cut?
Hi, Becky. Well, it's been absolutely outrageous, to be honest with you. We've had a serious waiting list. We've still got people on the waiting list, so it's taken us over 3 to 4 weeks to get the bookings in. And we're just sort of cautiously going forward and trying to do the right thing with all the COVID restrictions and everything. So it's, yeah, I think we're sitting back in our chair and just taking it as it comes and trying to do the right thing.
And just tell me quickly, how tough has it been for you as a business this past year?
Well, as a business for the whole year, it's been very challenging, I have to say. Lots of different changes that we've had to imply. The thing is, most of the time, what we've had to do is
That's okay. It's been tough, hasn't it? It's been really tough. And you have 150 members of staff. They've been on furlough, but thankfully the furlough scheme has been supporting them. And hopefully this will be the last time that this salon and many other salons across the country have to close.
OK, Becky, thank you. Well, let's head to Birmingham then. And Jim, you don't look dressed for a gym, Fraser, I have to say. You're not thinking of getting stuck in yourself this morning?
Well, I was worried I might put people off if they saw just how buff I was. They might realise that their aspirations would be too high if they were trying to match my physical manliness. But there's about 400 members here at the Temple Gym in Birmingham. A couple of dozen of them have been through the doors already. It opened at 6 o'clock this morning, and quite a few people are already in, getting back into their daily routines. And of course, we know that we've been hearing a lot about mental health during the pandemic and the lockdown restrictions and so on, and physical health is of course one way to achieve good mental health as well. Can have a chat with one of our gym goers now. I'm so sorry, Afton, to disturb you in the middle of your circuit at the moment. So just tell us, why were you so keen to get back through the door? You were the first one in at 6 o'clock this morning.
Yeah, I've been very excited, sort of like Christmas Day kind of feeling. I think it's just because it's been such a long year or year and a half for so many of us, and yeah, I think the lockdown's been quite isolating for a lot of people, and being able to come back in the gym and get back into lifting, it's like really important for everyone's mental health, and being back with other people, seeing people, training, and people that you normally see every day. It's kind of feeling of normality.
I think this lockdown's really highlighted that mental health aspect, hasn't it? Because, of course, everybody knows that gyms are great for physical well-being.
Yeah.
But I think during this lockdown it's become so much more apparent to people just how important it is for mental well-being as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think so many people really rely on it as a way of sort of venting, getting out sort of stress, and it's a breakup between sort of home and work, and it's really something you can work to, even though it is to do with physical health. You know, it all comes together when you're in the gym. So.
Brilliant. Well, Afton, thank you very much. I'll let you get back to your circuit now. You're doing a great job this morning, certainly putting yourself through your paces. So Afton, one of many members here who'll be hoping to get back into their daily routine. Great for physical well-being and, of course, great for mental health too.
Yeah, absolutely. Fraser, thank you. Well, let's get a bit more on the latest stage of the roadmap out of lockdown. We're joined by the former Chief Scientific Advisor and member of the Independent Sage Group, Sir David King. Good to see you once again, Sir David. Look, what's your view on this new stage out of lockdown kicking off today? Do you think this is happening at the right time?
Well, I have to admit that I'm one of those who rather badly needs a haircut, so I'm looking forward to getting my hair cut, of course, and a long waiting list and all that. I think that from our point of view, the population itself, we're all dying to get out of lockdown. And so from that point of view, it's very clear. From the point of view of the epidemic, I think it's all a little bit more worrying. And there I have to stress what is now happening, for example, in Chile. Chile is a country where the rate of vaccination amongst the population was the third highest in the world. And they were ahead of us in terms of the number of people who've had the vaccine. And they're suddenly now into a third wave. And their third wave, they now have 7,600 cases a day. And the total number of people in Chile now who have COVID-19 is over 1 million. So what has happened in Chile is very, very surprising. High percentage of people have been vaccinated, but here's a variant of the disease coming through the country.
I mean, I know we have to be very concerned about variants, but it'd be very difficult, wouldn't it, to maintain lockdown restrictions when we're looking at, in the last sort of 24-hour period, 1,730 cases, 7 deaths. I mean, it's the lowest recorded deaths we've had since September. I mean, that has to be providing some encouragement, doesn't it?
No, exactly. And the rate of vaccination of over 55-year-olds is over 90%. It's really incredible how the vaccination has been rolled out through the National Health Service. But what I do want to stress is, if you look at World Health Organization's advice to all countries, it is test, trace, isolate and support all of those who have the disease. That's the only way you safely emerge from the disease. Look at Australia, look at New Zealand. You also have to see that your incoming people from other countries are free of the disease. So I think the biggest problem we have is that our find, test, trace, isolate and support system has never produced that result. The government has to grab hold of it. It's spending £135 billion in the private sector companies of our money, public money, on this process, and it hasn't succeeded. If we have a new outbreak, we need to separate everyone with the disease and those who've been in contact with them from the rest of the population, and then we can go on with our business.
Is there a concern as well at the moment over virus hotspots? I mean, the idea that we are treating England as a whole and not, we don't seem to be getting a lot of focus on virus hotspots, even though we know they exist.
Yes, you're quite right. And of course, the extent of the COVID-19 outbreak now, daily extent, is much lower in the south than in the north. But as you might predict, the cities with relatively high density populations of people who are not wealthy, people who are not middle class, people who are really suffering, there we have seen no real focus from the government on stepping into those communities with people from those communities to see that we get proper isolation, that we see that we get proper lockdown. So you're quite right. Wherever there is disease, we know there is a risk. And let me also add then, it is in our self-interest to get vaccination occurring around the world. Wherever it occurs in the world, whatever we do, it will arrive here. So we have an interest in really getting this disease out of the way in our own country, and particularly in deprived areas, but also, of course, overseas. We have a massive production capacity for vaccines. Why we haven't ramped it up here in Britain, I just have no idea. We still depend on importing from manufacturers out in other countries. But nevertheless, we need to support strongly. And I think the notion that the G7 put forward by Gordon Brown, that the G7 ought to be supporting international vaccination, is really top rate. We must support that.
And so with all that in mind, and I think a lot of people will absolutely appreciate your sentiment that if we don't tackle it everywhere on the globe, we're going to end up with a problem back here. With that in mind, do you think that there should be the focus that there is on trying to ease holiday, foreign travel restrictions by the summer? Should that be something that we rule out till next year at the earliest?
Yes, I think perhaps. Although, you know, I'm in favour of having a traffic light system for countries. So if we're talking about travelling directly to a country with a very low rate of the disease, and if the proper precautions are taken, that you're fully tested or fully vaccinated, then I think it is quite feasible to allow people to travel overseas. But I think it should be on a very restricted basis. I think that we know that the South African variant, for example, has come into this country. There's a significant take-up of it here. And the Brazilian variant, I don't believe we can keep it out of the country. So the importance of the find, test, trace, isolate and support system just cannot be overestimated. I do not understand why we talk about testing capacity, which is now enormous, that's very good, without understanding the whole point of testing is that you can isolate those people who test positive and all of those who've been in contact with them. We're not going to do that, particularly in deprived communities, if we don't then also support those people who have to be isolated. That means financially supporting them, but also supporting them if they cannot be isolated in their own homes. Okay. Many people are living with bigger families.
I'm afraid we are out of time. We're going to have to leave it there. But Sir David, we really appreciate your thoughts. Thanks very much indeed for talking to us today. Now, still to come for you this morning, big issue sellers will return to the streets in England and Wales today for the first time since the third national lockdown. We'll speak to a vendor along with the founder of the magazine at 7:30. With non-essential shops reopening from today, we'll also talk to the chief executive of the British Retail Consortium. That's at 7:40. And at 8:05, the Conservative MP Tobias Ellwood, as ministers return to Parliament earlier than expected to pay tribute to the Duke of Edinburgh. And so politicians across the UK will today pay tribute to Prince Philip, who died on Friday at the grand age of 99. The House of Commons, the Scottish Parliament and the Senate are all being recalled especially. Now, while some newspapers are reporting that Prince Harry has also flown into the UK in plenty of time so he can quarantine ahead of the Duke of Edinburgh's funeral on Saturday. Our royal correspondent, Rhiannon Mills, reports.
In Westminster, as the flags fly at half-mast, MPs will return early and Boris Johnson will lead the tributes. For a man who met hundreds of politicians in his lifetime and 14 prime ministers, but was always expected to leave matters of state to the Queen.
And there will be many people who are members of Parliament who will wish to pay tribute to the work that he did, who recall visits to their constituencies, things that perhaps factories that he opened or companies that he visited or charities that he visited.
As the family prepare for the funeral next Saturday, there are reports that Prince Harry is now in the UK. The first time he's been back since the Sussexes decided to step away and move to America, and did that interview with Oprah. Some suggesting the Duke's death may be an opportunity for reconciliation. Outside church on Sunday, Prince Philip's daughter-in-law Sophie shared details of his final moments.
It was so gentle. It's just like somebody took you by the hand. Very, very peaceful. And that's all you want for somebody to do.
Prince Andrew describing how the Queen is coping as they all rally round her.
I feel very sorry and supportive of my mother, who's feeling it, I think, probably more than everybody else. She described his passing as a miracle, and she's contemplating, I think is the way that I would put it. She described it as having left a huge void.
Prince Edward swapping stories with staff from the estate about what a character his father had been.
He went carriage driving around here on a regular basis, but he'd go to places that were quite all over the place, and so we were just talking.
Pulled out of a few ditches here, I seem to remember as well.
Oh well, the early days, yes, he used to have a few problems.
No,
so,
quite more recently too.
The tributes have been just fantastic, and that's really, really important, and we really do appreciate it.
And Princess Anne released this loving photo of her father, saying, "You know it's going to happen, but you're never really ready. My father has been my teacher, my supporter and my critic, but mostly it is his example of a life well lived and service freely given that I most wanted to emulate." It is incredibly rare to hear members of the royal family speaking this personally. And I think one of the reasons they are is because they can't come out and see for themselves the flowers that people are bringing. But they do want to acknowledge just how much it means to them, and also how they've been lifted by hearing those memories of Prince Philip, some that they've never even heard before. The nation has so often turned to the Queen in difficult times. Now Her Majesty and her family are finding comfort from the public. Rhiannon Mills, Sky News at Windsor Castle.
And of course, we will have full coverage of the funeral of the Duke of Edinburgh here on Sky News. That's on Saturday. Our coverage starts at 2 o'clock. Now, David Cameron has broken his silence on the lobbying row which has dogged him in recent weeks. The former Prime Minister stands accused of abusing his position by repeatedly lobbying former colleagues to help Greensill Capital, which has since gone bust. In a statement, he insisted he complied with the rules, but conceded that communications with government should be done only through formal channels to avoid what he called misinterpretation. Well, our political correspondent, Joe Pike, is here. Benefit of hindsight, Joe?
Yeah, it's sort of a hint of regret from Mr Cameron, but let's be clear, he has released this statement more than 3 weeks after the story started, and they've been coming out pretty consistently over the last 3 weeks. Some criticism from both Labour and Conservative MPs that he's almost slipped out this statement on a Sunday at a time after the death of the Duke of Edinburgh, where criticism of others, of political foes, is pretty muted, and that it isn't a particularly a good time to get out that statement. There was no apology in the statement either, and it concerns Mr Cameron's relationship, of course, this whole story with a guy called Lex Greensill, a financial services businessman who he brought into his own government, the centre of his own administration, but also lobbied on behalf of Mr Greensill during the COVID pandemic to try and get access to cheap loans. Now, the Cameron statement was quite long. This is the key paragraph, though. He says, "There are important lessons to be learnt. As a former Prime Minister, I accept that communications with government need to be done through only the most formal of channels, so there can be no room for misinterpretation." Let's be clear, he's sort of regretting the fact that he texted Rishi Sunak, he contacted 2 other junior Treasury ministers, and he also, before the COVID pandemic, had a drink with Matt Hancock. Now, over the last 3 weeks, we've had pretty consistently lots of stories from the Sunday Times and Financial Times about this. It may not be the end, even if of this story, even though Mr Cameron is potentially trying to draw a line under it. And this is the view of Sir Alistair Graham, who used to be the chair of the Committee on Standards in Public Life.
It's about a level playing field. The private sector should all have a similar access to government. And there's no reason why the Prime Minister or the Chief Executive of the company couldn't have just written to the Treasury in the same way that any other company asking for some advice.
Mr Cameron still has not spoken on camera, still has not answered really any detailed questions on this. I think there will still be journalists, at least from Sky News, wanting to ask questions to him. There doesn't, though, Stephen, at this point, seem to be any formal investigation into his actions, either as Prime Minister or after he left office. The Treasury Select Committee decided not to investigate it, but it's possible that they could change their mind after the most recent revelations.
Now, let's see what the weather's going to do for you today. Morning, Joe. It's all about the wardrobe choices, isn't it?
Put its way inland a little bit, but also we've just had a flurry of text messages saying it's snowing in London, and it is indeed. There's an area of rain, sleet and snow. Gave about 6 or 7 centimetres of falling snow over Wales this morning. It's travelling its way southeastwards, crossing over us now and then disappearing off towards the southeast. Other than that, we've got a northeast-southwest divide. Let's take a look.
Look forward to brighter skies. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Hello there, good morning to you. Yes, we've got very cold air over us still. Temperatures back to -8 for the 3rd night running last night. But we've also got clearer skies towards the north and the east, and then more in the way of cloud across Ireland, Wales, the southwest, central, southern parts of England. And it's this which is carrying that area of rain, sleet and snow and pushing its way southeastwards first thing this morning. But it will eventually clear, and then the cloud thins and breaks a little bit in these southwestern areas, whilst we see cloud bubbling up in these northeastern places. So eventually we get a bit of a balance going on, and the emphasis pretty much on dry weather. I'm not saying there won't be any showers in these southwestern areas, because there will, but hopefully they will start to become more scattered. Temperatures 10 or 11 degrees Celsius, not too bad, 52 degrees Fahrenheit in the southwest. Under the clearer skies, still single figures, so it is a little on the chilly side, but where you get some sunshine, it will actually feel quite pleasant if you are out in the sun. And then to end the day, a lot of that cloud starts to disappear. Clear skies again tonight means another cold one. Temperatures well below freezing, so a widespread frost, but the weather's looking nice again for tomorrow and fewer showers.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, let's return now to the death of Prince Philip, who died on Friday at the age of 99. He spent decades working as a full-time royal and only retired in 2017. Well, let's talk to Press Association photographer Yui Mock, who photographed the Duke of Edinburgh at his last individual public engagement in 2017. It's good to see you this morning. How does it feel? I mean, I guess you knew at the time, but it reiterates it even more now, doesn't it, that the pictures you took are now a piece of history?
Good morning. Yeah, it's like most the aim of most photographers, or you know, to make a great picture is to capture the decisive moment. And I think on this occasion, I did capture one of them, and that was the Duke at his last ever public solo engagement, and that was a different view. My abiding memory of the occasion was the absolutely appalling weather. It was downpour, and it was a typical British, you know, sort of like autumn weather. But the Duke was there, simple attire in a raincoat, bowler hat, no fuss, no airs or graces, and he just got on with the job. And it was amazing and quite inspirational, really.
But there's something about the tipping of the hat, isn't there? You know, as he walked off, which you capture so beautifully, and which, you know, it epitomises someone of his age, I guess. It just gets the mood absolutely right.
For sure. It's a very dignified, you know, look, and there's a lot spoken of him recently about his stoicism and his you know, no nonsense approach in a way. He's very forthright, but he's very generous to his subjects when he does his engagements. So he gives them all the time, and you know, he's a very old school man, gentleman.
How hard is it at these sort of events to capture the sense of occasion in a picture?
It's a lot of it's down to luck, where you're positioned, and if the subject, on this occasion, the Duke, did something visual, like tipping of the hat, or taking a salute, or making a funny remark to someone. You're lucky if you're in the right place at the right time. But you use your instincts, and you try to position yourself as best you can to capture the moment.
How useful was it on that particular day that he was, you know, with a group of people that he very much admired? I mean, obviously his connection to the armed forces is absolutely immense, and these are men and women that he respected in return. I mean, that again, that's captured beautifully in the pictures. It's nice to almost see him at ease with these sort of young, fit people who fight for Queen and country.
Yes. Well, his association dates back to 1953, so he's got such a history with the Royal Navy, the Royal Marines. And it was fitting, really, that his last engagement was to, take the salute and be with them in a way. He was appointed Captain General, and this was like his farewell to them, and it completed the circle.
What seems interesting in a way as we reflect on the life of the Duke is that there is nobody else. I mean, you get closer to these people than most of us, but there doesn't seem to be anybody else who has that same character. I mean, a great dignity, but also this tremendous irreverence in a sense. So he was certainly a unique character, wasn't he?
He was a one-off, and they say they don't make them like that anymore. They certainly don't. And he held a lot of values that a lot of people could, take lessons from today. Really, I know he was very colourful, spoke his mind, and didn't take any nonsense. But he was very fair and very generous and kind. And he was a very modern man in a way, but also very old-fashioned, and his traditions obviously his life was shaped by the Royal Navy from a young age, and he carried those values with him for the rest of his life.
Look, Hughie, really good to talk to you this morning. I know it must be a bit odd being on the other side of the lens for you, but really good to see you today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now, as coronavirus restrictions further ease across England and Wales, big issue sellers will be back on the streets today. About 1,400 vendors are going to resume selling the magazine for the first time in 22 weeks since the start of the third lockdown. They're going to be given PPE, and contactless card payments are going to be encouraged to maintain safety standards. Excuse me. Let's talk to the co-founder of Big Issue, Lord Bird. John, it's really good to see you this morning. How important is it for these vendors that they can now get back out on the streets?
Well, for the last 23 weeks, they've been in hibernation, really. They really want to get on with it. Most of them really like working with the public. The public actually are the people who make their lives really work. So what we hope is that everybody goes out when they see the vendors, they buy from the vendors. If they can't, then buy through the website. The money still is split 50-50 with our vendors. And this is a really remarkable opportunity for us. We're working to get the vendors out, to get them selling. And hopefully, I think, selling the Big Issue on the street is a strange indication of a return to a kind of normality, because so many people have a brilliant relationship with a vendor or two in and around the country.
I mean, how difficult has it been for vendors? Because, I mean, one of the key points of what you have achieved over the years is that these are people who need help, need assistance, but they're not asking for donations, are they? They are selling a product, and that carries a certain amount of respect in that sense. So to have that taken away from them for so long must have been hugely difficult.
Yeah, I was with a group of vendors on Wednesday when we did a kind of publicity shot, and it was electric. And the reason for that is because they have this thirst to get on with the work. They look upon it as work. They look upon it as their opportunity. And as you say, they're working. They're not asking for a donation. They're asking for something that makes sense to us all. So this is a real high point. The other thing is that what's happened over the last year is that our business has changed, so that we've become closer and closer to the vendors. We've been able to work much more hand to hand, one-to-one with them. And all of them are saying they want to use this as an opportunity to improve their lives again, which is exactly the reason we started the Big Issue 30 years ago.
What sort of assistance have they been given? What have you been able to do for them during this time when they've not been able to get out selling?
Well, we've been able to give them money. We've been able to give them goods. We've been able to give them coupons which they can use in the supermarket. We've been able to talk with them and kind of help them in a kind of psychological way. And that is really a very strange thing, because we started the Big Issue to give people a hand up, not a handout. And over the last year, what we've had to do is we've had to keep supporting them and supporting them. Now is the chance, hopefully, if this is the last lockdown, hopefully this is a chance for them to get back to where they want to be, which is determining their own lives, determining what they can do, how much money they make, how much effort they can put in, what effort they need to get off the streets, to move on and to rebuild their lives.
Well, the lockdown easing takes another step today, and it includes the reopening of non-essential shops. I, for one, am desperate for some new towels. Don't ask why, it's got to be done today. Now, the Chief Executive of the British Retail Consortium, Helen Dickinson, joins me now. Look, Helen, really good to see you this morning. This is clearly a very big day and a big step. What have shops had to do to prepare for this moment?
Well, it is. It's a big day, isn't it, for the country, and it's a big day for all of those businesses across certainly England and Wales reopening their doors today. So I'm sure you're going to be able to find some towels somewhere. But what they've been doing is many of those businesses have had people on furlough, so bringing those people back, making sure that they're happy and ready for work, making sure the stores are prepared, that they're clean and safe. That they've got all the stock that they want and need in the right place in order to be able to welcome people back. So they are very excited. I know that from talking to lots of them over the last few weeks. They are desperate to welcome their customers back, and it is a big day. The focus there on safety and excitement, really.
Yeah, I mean, safety is clearly the key issue. I mean, obviously, a lot of them were operating in COVID-safe ways before the latest shutdown for them. So has it been difficult to sort of bring those procedures back in play?
No, actually. I think because they've been through the process before, often on various occasions, because if we all remember back to last year, seems like a lifetime ago, but as well as the national lockdowns, we had the various tier systems across different parts of the country. And so I think they would have been ready last week, the week before, and are just keen and enthusiastic about welcoming people back. So I think it's much more about what we will see in terms of us all as customers and our behaviours, and ensuring that we've got the confidence to come back, and also that we as members of the public have a part to play in following the signage, the guidance that we get given, queuing if we need to, waymarking around the stores, and all of the safety procedures that are there in place. So we've got a role too. Yeah.
Look, how many businesses, what sort of level of proportion of businesses are looking at today as either sort of do or die, if you like? How many businesses really need this to work pretty quickly in order to stay afloat?
Well, what we've seen over the course of the 3 lockdowns is about £30 billion of lost sales through stores that didn't happen because those stores were closed. And so there will be hundreds, thousands of businesses up and down the country where it's really important what does happen over the coming days and weeks. Certainly, I think the feeling is that there will be a bit of pent-up demand out there, and that people will come back not only because they need something, but also because they want to play a part in their local community, and because there is an enjoyment for lots of people in going shopping, and therefore having everything available to us all again over the coming days and weeks is going to be a real major part in terms of our feeling that we're getting some of our so-called normal life back. So I hope that everybody will support their local businesses, and those businesses can play their part in the recovery, and that we don't lose too many more of them.
I just wonder what sort of difference you're expecting between, I mean, someone like a shopping centre, you would expect to be comparatively busy, and at least people can move from one shop to another. There's going to be a difference, isn't there, between that and the turnout we're likely to see on your average high street?
Well, one of the characteristics that certainly we saw during the course of last year, when all of retail was open, is the effect of working from home for lots of people. So big cities, big urban centres, that's actually where the footfall has been hit hardest, because often that footfall was driven by people who were going to and from work, or going out in their lunchtime, or by tourists as well. And we have seen not so many of the latter, and certainly everybody's working patterns, whether they've been going into a workplace or for the half or so of the population that's been working from home, have been very different. So I think local high streets and towns will be busier perhaps than big urban centres. Shopping centres, I think we will see an uptick on what we've seen before, but I think it will kind of depend on how confident people feel to get back out there, and hopefully, given all the investment in safety that those businesses have made, I hope that everybody will.
Are you quite confident that people will be sort of happy to switch away from online, which of course we've been almost forced to use over the last 12 months quite a lot?
Well, I think online is a major part of retail. It was a growing part of retailing in advance of March 2020, and what we've seen on the back of the pandemic is that growth has really accelerated. So I think what pretty much every business that I talk to expects to see in the future is a much closer connection, if you like, between physical retailing and digital retailing. Such that for us as shoppers, they're much more sort of seamlessly connected. I mean, we already think about things like click and collect. We will certainly, I think, see much more of that. And how those businesses use social media and connection with their customers much more in the future. So I think it's much more about how they work together with each other, online, offline, physical and digital, rather than seeing them as in competition.
Yeah. Look, Helen, really good to talk to you. I have to say, if you want towels, you've got to go and feel them first, haven't you? It's just the way with towels. I'm going to enjoy my shop today. Good to see you.
Good. I hope you get some good towels. Thanks.
Oh, I will. OK, let's see what the weather's going to do for you today. Here's Joe.
Look forward to brighter skies. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Good morning. Well, it looks as though quite a few people will be out and about today. So the weather, really, we've got a divide. Northern and eastern parts, very cold start to the day. Plenty of sunshine to come, but it won't be that warm. Whereas it's more cloudy down towards the southwest, a few outbreaks of showery rain, but these should die out during the day.